Welcome to Driving and Dementia. This session is for people who are living with cognitive changes caused by dementia, as well as for those who are supporting people living with dementia. Today's topic is one that many families find difficult to experience, difficult to talk about, and difficult to know what to do and when. The goal of today's session is to provide some facts around the impact that dementia has on driving, some tools that can be used to assess changes in driving, and some ways of approaching the plans and discussion around driving and dementia. Let's start by imagining you're driving down a quiet neighborhood street after dinner when suddenly a basketball rolls out in front of your vehicle. How do you think dementia might alter your judgment and reaction time? What about the impact of the brain changes on your night vision and peripheral vision? Driving requires complex coordination between your eyes, brain, and muscles and demands quick physical responses. Because of the degenerative brain damage related to dementia, unsafe driving is inevitable. Eventually, all people with a progressive dementia will no longer be able to drive safely. Dementia impairs many functions that are needed to drive safely, including reaction time, peripheral vision, depth perception, night vision, and problem-solving abilities. Medication side effects can make things worse as well. Physical changes to the visual processing areas of the brain can affect someone's ability to process visual information. And that means it can affect a person's ability to see something that's right in front of them. An example of this might be someone might go to the fridge and not be able to see the ketchup bottle, even though it is right in front of them. What effect might this have on driving? Imagine the impact on our ability to physically see a stop sign or see a person who's about to cross the road. The facts may be difficult to hear. Older drivers with dementia are at greater risk for accidents compared to drivers without dementia. A driver with dementia is over 2.5 times more likely to be involved in a motor vehicle collision than a driver of a comparable age without a diagnosis of dementia. Half of all drivers with dementia have a serious crash within 2 years of diagnosis. Even the best of drivers will be negatively affected by a progressive dementia. It is not due to a lack of skills, but rather a result of the changes in the brain due to an illness. And so the decision to stop driving is not a matter of if, but when. So let's think about this. What are some of the challenges when it comes to giving up driving? For you, for the person you are caring for, if you are living with cognitive changes, for your care partner? What are some challenges of giving up driving? And I would encourage you to think what comes to mind for you. Some people have shared with us that they need to drive because there is no one else to take them to appointments and for groceries. Driving represents freedom, independence, and mobility. Others have also shared that they have been driving for more than 60 years, and being a driver is central to how they see themselves. Does that ring any bells for you? There is little doubt that dementia is a journey of losses, and driving can be one of the most difficult losses to cope with. Driving can be a huge part of a person's identity, and having to give this up can be devastating. Many report the loss of driving as being worse than death, which underscores the vital and integral nature of this part of ourselves. Driving or retiring from driving means we need to plan alternative ways of getting around, which can be difficult for some people to get used to, as they may now have to fit into other people's schedules. This is particularly challenging if the person with dementia is the only driver in the household or the primary driver. Both caregiver and person living with dementia may find yourself struggling with this decision. Driving cessation also means significant changes in lifestyle and an increased dependence on others. For the person living with dementia, this may be a painful reminder that the disease is progressing. But there are actually some positives about not driving. Some positives that people have shared with us are that family and friends stop worrying, or they worry, or at least worry less. Also, not driving usually means saving money. It is expensive to keep a car, gas, insurance, and maintenance for a car are all costly, and that money saved can be used for taxis. Are there any others that you can think of that might be positive about not driving? What about seeing more of the world as a passenger? Not driving also encourages people to get out and go for more walks. You might find that you find new locals, new coffee shops in your own neighborhood that you haven't discovered before. It may be hard for us to acknowledge positives of driving retirement. If nothing else, the reduction of worry can be huge for both the person living with dementia and the care partner. Less worry and stress about having to remember how to drive to destinations and the rules of the road. I'm going to share a quote with you. This quote is from Dave Barry, who's a comedian, and he says, "The one thing that unites all human beings, regardless of age, gender, religion, economic status, or ethnic background, is that deep inside, we all believe that we are above average drivers." While this quote is obviously not completely true, most of us want to believe that our driving abilities are better than they may be. This does not always make it true, though. For a person living with dementia, this may mean that we need to be creative in our approach to the retirement from driving. One of the difficulties with driving cessation is that there may be damage to the part of the brain that allows us to be aware of our actions and the impact of our own actions. As a frequent result, the person living with dementia may not realize that their driving has deteriorated. This puts increased pressure on caregivers to monitor their driving and ensure that a plan for retiring from driving is in place. Receiving a diagnosis of dementia does not mean that you will automatically lose your driver's license. However, there may come a time when driving is no longer safe. And so we strongly recommend that you have the discussion early on about stopping driving. As we have just discussed, this is a very emotional topic, and so it is important to be sensitive to the loss the driver is experiencing. Try to come up with a plan together for driving retirement and try to agree on a plan or a strategy for driving cessation in advance. A plan alleviates the stress of the decision making later on, even if someone is unable to recall the plan. You may want to frame the conversation as a person retiring from driving. Also, to find out what alternative transportation is available in your community. Public transit, rides provided by community organizations or volunteers, lifts from family members and friends, as well as taxi savers. They can agree upon a checklist of changes that will be an indication that it's time to stop. Together, review the common warning signs listed in the driving handout. Consider using the BCAA driving warning signs checklist. In fact, this is a useful checklist for all of us to use. Obviously, any of them can happen to any of us, but an accumulation of these experiences indicate that it is time to discuss stopping driving. This checklist includes things like stops in traffic for no reason, has difficulty judging distance, gets lost while driving, sometimes misses traffic signs, has close calls or near misses, hits the curb, scrapes or dents the car, fails to stop for red lights or stop signs, sometimes confuses the brake and gas pedals, drives slowly, drives slower than average speed. Cars seem to appear from nowhere, or other drivers are honking at the driver. Keep in mind that if you're a person living with dementia, you probably experience some short-term memory loss. So it's possible that you may forget giving up your license or discussing alternative travel arrangements. Work with someone you trust to come up with a plan to help you remember. Do you want a reminder note on the fridge or a note that could be right on the car window? What will help you remember the decision you make around driving and safety? Also consider that also consider that things are cues for driving. Put the car keys out of sight in a safe place. Lock the steering wheel with a club. Sometimes it's better to park the car out of sight. It's tough to see that car every day and reminded that you can't drive. When it comes to having conversations about retiring from driving, there are things that may help to make it a wee bit easier. Recognize and acknowledge the feelings of loss for both you, the person living with dementia, and caregiver, especially if you rely heavily on your vehicle. Focus on safety. As a care partner, try to be honest about your concerns for driver safety. If you are a person living with dementia, know that dementia can make it difficult for you to recognize changes in your ability to drive. It is also possible that you could forget the time you scraped your car or hit a curb. Dementia may interfere with your ability to evaluate your driving skills. So having someone you trust help you assess your driving could be very useful. Use questions in conversation to try to guide the person to their own conclusion about driving. One question that often helps families decide if it is time to have the conversation is to ask yourself if you would be comfortable having the driver driving on their own with their grandchildren in the car. You may think that the driver always has a support person with them, but again, consider if the driver were operating the vehicle alone with grandchildren in the car. For many, this emphasizes concerns of safety and can bring light to the gravity of your concerns. It is always better if the driver voluntarily gives up their license. This protects their dignity and can make them feel more comfortable about their decision, though the changes in the brain due to dementia may mean that they need to have this conversation several times, and that the person living with the cognitive changes is very likely to forget both the discussion and the fact that they are no longer have a license. Sometimes the conversation around driving retirement is just too difficult for a family member or friend. The topic is sensitive and it can also be very emotional. Care partners and people living with dementia may refer or consult with a physician or another family member whom they trust. Some doctors will prescribe driving retirement on a prescription pad, which can help with remembering. It's important how you have this conversation and with whom. Discuss how alternatives to driving can help to maintain independence and consider exploring driving alternatives together as a new activity. For example, taking the bus route together. I'm going to share a short video with you that may help with the conversation. In the video created by the Alzheimer's Association, Frank has early stage Alzheimer's, and the doctor has said it's no longer safe for him to drive. His wife doesn't drive but knows it's time to discuss finding alternative transportation.
Frank was diagnosed last year with Alzheimer's. His doctor has insisted that he stop driving immediately due to his diminished and deteriorating cognitive judgment. Frank's wife, Betty, agrees with the doctor. However, Betty has never driven and is an unlikely candidate for learning. She has relied on Frank for all of their transportation needs, but she knows she must confront him.
I think I'll head on over to Jim's before it gets too late.
Oh, honey, wait a moment, please. This is from Dr. Robinson. Do you remember from yesterday?
No, I do not.
Would you read it, please?
There's nothing wrong with my driving.
You almost hit a man yesterday. He was on his bicycle, don't you remember?
There's no such thing as a prescription to stop driving.
This is from Dr. Robinson, just to remind you, when we met with him yesterday. We met yesterday morning. Honey.
I know, Okay. I sometimes forget where you get your hair done. On Fridays, where you get it done on Fridays, but that has nothing to do with my driving.
You always told me to be honest with you. When this thing first started, you said no matter how difficult, I needed to be direct. You almost hit a man yesterday. He was riding on his bicycle. Do you know we could never live with ourselves if we hurt someone?
We?
This is us. We're a team. This is us, we. Frank, you've been driving for almost 60 years, and you're a great driver. But things change. We're older now.
You could drive us.
Not with my eyes. I couldn't get a license.
The cinnamon rolls. The coffee and the cinnamon rolls at the mall. Who's going to drive us there in the morning? That's our group.
Frank, I've been thinking about this. Ted and Joan always say they want to help.
He's a terrible driver.
Or we could start a carpool and we'd buy the cinnamon rolls and the coffee. Huh? Just the coffee. Oh, what does it matter? What difference is it, Frank?
What about your hair? They're not going to take you to the salon, too.
It's so close. I could get a taxi. Remember when we first made a decision to downsize to this place? One of the reasons we moved here was because it was so close to everything. That was part of the plan. Honey, please.
What kind of a man am I if I can't even drive you to get your hair done or to the mall?
No.
That's not a life. That's nothing.
Frank.
It's nothing.
A real man understands change and tries to act in a responsible way. You're a real man, Frank. I don't need a chauffeur. I didn't marry a chauffeur. I don't need you to drive me, to drive us. Nothing matters, Frank. Except you. Nothing. You're all that matters to me. I love you, Frank.
Speaking to a spouse with Alzheimer's about stopping driving can be very challenging, especially if he or she has been the main driver in the family. Here are some ideas for how to frame the conversation. Reinforce medical diagnoses and directives. Frank trusts and respects his longtime doctor and may be more likely to accept his recommendation. Anticipating that Frank would not remember his doctor's instructions, Betty had the physician write on a prescription pad that Frank was to no longer drive. She shows him the prescription when he becomes defensive. Demonstrate understanding and empathy. Acknowledge the difficulty that relinquishing driving poses. Betty states that she knows Frank has been a good driver for more than 60 years, but she then explains that he no longer possesses the necessary judgment to drive safely. Stress the positive while offering alternatives. Driving is an empowering activity, especially for seniors. Finding an alternate driving source can help alleviate feelings of helplessness. Betty tells Frank that they can reach out to their friends to carpool to the mall each morning, and that she can take a taxi to her Friday hair appointments. Offer unconditional love and support. Agreeing to stop driving can be humiliating, leading to feelings of worthlessness. Reassure the person of your unconditional support and love, dismissing any significance attached to driving. Betty tells Frank that he was never her chauffeur and that she loves him. This may be the first of many conversations about driving. Due to the person's dementia, it is likely that you will have to address the driving issue several times. The person may forget that they agreed to stop driving, or they may not believe they cannot drive safely anymore, in spite of evidence to the contrary. It is important to remain patient, but firm about the decision.
We all want to act responsibly as citizens in our communities to ensure that our roads are safe for ourselves, our families, other drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. Conversations about changing driving skills are difficult yet important to have. So, what tools are available to help ensure safety for you and everyone around you? The first source of help is our doctors. In BC, physicians have a legal duty to report patients who have a medical condition that can make driving dangerous. I have heard from some clients that the day they receive their diagnosis, they have their license taken away, even though they feel it is too early. From other clients, I have heard of family members struggling for months and even years with the person living with dementia continuing to drive. Family members and other concerned individuals can also report unsafe drivers to Road Safety BC. Concerns must be expressed in writing and must include your name, how you know the person with dementia, and give supporting reasons for your concerns. Information can be sent to Road Safety BC by email. However, they recommend that information is sent by fax to speed up the process. Road Safety BC does not identify who sent the report unless it was a physician. While the driver in question can submit a Freedom of Information request to identify the person, this is a very complicated legal procedure, so the chance of the person living with dementia finding out who reported them is low. I have never come across a client who used a Freedom of Information request. The driver's medical examination report is a primary tool used to assess driving fitness. It is mailed to the driver and completed by the person's physician. An addition enhanced road assessment may be requested to complete the assessment if Road Safety BC determines that more information or assessment is required to accurately assess driver medical fitness. The ERA is conducted by ICBC on behalf of Road Safety BC. The assessment is completed in a vehicle that the driver provides. It is designed to evaluate driving skills and behavior in real-world driving situations that require increased cognitive demand. If the person is found fit to drive, they will receive a notice from Road Safety BC. The person may have their driving capability reassessed in intervals determined on a case-by-case basis. If someone disagrees with the final assessment by Road Safety BC, you can write to Road Safety BC office to request the decision be reconsidered. So to summarize, driving is a complex brain function, and most dementias cause an ever-increasing number of changes in the brain. Eventually, a person with a progressive dementia will no longer be able to drive safely. Planning for the day when driving is not possible helps ease the transition into other transportation. Consider how to have conversations about driving and with whom. A physician can and often does play a role in driving evaluation and cessation, and Road Safety BC is part of the process. If you have questions about information you've heard here or any other questions about living with dementia, please don't hesitate to call our First Link Dementia Helpline. The English helpline is open Monday to Friday between 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can call, when you do call, ask if someone can send you a local community resource list that may help you discover what transportation services are available in your community. You will also see some links to some helpful documents and checklists in the more info box below this video.